Good morning, guys, or evening, depending on where you're watching this episode of The Detour. I'm your host, Dan Jones, as always, joined by four-time National Road Champion Johnny Trevorrow. Johnny, we've got a bit of a different episode today. How would you describe the show?
Oh, I think we're talking to two real characters, an Aussie based in Belgium and a Belgian who looks after a few Aussies. And look, I think people are going to really enjoy the show. I think it's going to be something very special.
Now, we're going to cross live to our man on the ground, Sandy Woolley. Sandy, can you hear us, mate?
Dan. More importantly, can you hear me?
We can, mate. We don't have to use sign language this morning. It's fantastic. How's the ride shaping up today?
Looking really good. We've got strong numbers. We're again on our usual course in countryside France. Nice flat course. So, yeah, it should be a nice ride as usual.
And as always, for the next couple of weeks, we've paired up with Telstra Connected Cycling. This is the Tandem Series. Now, how do people get involved with the Telstra Connected Cycling, mate?
Well, there's a few ways. Firstly, if you want to just hit us up at Telstra Connected Cycling at team.telstra.com, you can do that and we'll add you to our email list. You can also join us on LinkedIn and Facebook. So we've got a couple of groups there. So join up and we put our whatever we've got coming up on those platforms. And
Duncan Armstrong, he's going to be ready to go in a couple of weeks' time. I think you've got some special guests maybe lined up.
Yes, we do. So we're hoping to have a chat to Duncan on the 16th. He's given us a thumbs up. He's still got to be a bit of road to go in relation to his recovery. So obviously a big turn up, but he's doing well. So thumbs up for that on the 16th, and that'll round out our year. I will also say, Dan, for those in Melbourne, where I am, lockdown central through winter, we are doing well with COVID. So I am planning to, I have put up a poll on our Facebook page for those in Melbourne who would like to do an in real life back wheel on ride around Albert Park Lake. So, and if you can't get here, do your best. It'd be great to have an opportunity to meet some people in real life. So jump on and give us an indication whether you're up for that.
People talk about sort of almost COVID anxiety, you know, when you actually have to meet people again. How do you guys go being the virtual riders to hitting the real road?
Yeah, it's been interesting. Firstly, I had to learn how to balance again after a number of months just on Zwift. And but it's been really good recently, and it's almost like it hasn't happened. Very conscious of the fact that many people dialed in this morning in other parts of the world are probably going through a really rough time like we did in Melbourne. So thoughts to them, hang tough, you will get through it.
Iffy?
Yeah, I want to know a bit more about this Albert Park ride, mate. I'll have to come down and join you. So what date's that?
Oh, good question. 18th of December, Friday morning, 18th of December. So, yeah, we'll come together and just bring as many friends as we can, as many of our past guests. I'll see if I can get Matt Keenan along. Maybe Matt's listening in this morning. We'd love to have him there.
Oh, he loves it. All right, mate. Well, we'll check in with you throughout the ride and see how you're traveling. You're kicking off in, what, 6 minutes?
5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Just over 5 minutes. So we'll have an easy rollout as usual. Encourage those who are listening and in the ride to stick with the beacon. We have the Cisco WebEx closest to the beacon prize as usual. So stay close to me. I'll take a photo along the way and send you out a pretty cool prize.
Good stuff, mate. All right. Well, as we said, we'll check in again with you soon, Sandy.
Cheers, guys. Thanks. Looking forward to it.
Cheers, mate. Okay, Johnny. Well, you've got a script. Time to give us a really smooth intro, mate, for our next two guests.
Well, that's easy to do, mate. I'll try not to cough as I normally do. But
no, you don't need to cough for this one. Have that for Michelin.
So we have Bernard Moerman, spent more than 2 decades as a talent manager, mentor and team director in the world of elite level cycling. As founder of the Cycling Centre, which I wish was around when I was a youngster in Belgium, and later general manager of Team 3M. Over the years, he's hosted close to 1,000 young riders in Belgium. He currently works as an executive coach, blogger and author. And Jamie Anderson, who's an Aussie based over there, is Professor of Leadership at Antwerp Management School, a 4-time TED speaker and mentor to many former professional cyclists. James is also a very competitive Masters cyclist, multiple UCI World Series event winner, and currently European champion for the individual time trial. Sounds impressive, doesn't it?
It does. And they join us now. Fellas, welcome to the Detour. We'll start with you, Jamie. How was John's intro? Very, very polished.
Well, John, as my wife always says, the secret to happiness in life is low expectations. So I think you've now I think you blew that one out of the water. I mean, good intro. I mean, you did mention that I'm Australian, but I've been living away from Australia for almost half my life now. I grew up in Shepparton in country Victoria, but my wife she's a Dutch-speaking Belgian lady. So I don't know do you guys know what happens to an Australian when he hangs out with Dutch speakers a lot?
You get more of a twang, and you probably eat more frites.
I mean, Dan, it's not so much the twang, but I've actually been recently accused of being South African.
That old chestnut.
Yeah. Australian together with the Dutch thing, you start sounding Afrikaans, which is a bit of where we come from, that's not the coolest thing to have.
Yeah. Now, one of the themes that we want to touch on today is cycling transitions. You did an interview, a fantastic interview last week with your series, This Cycling Life. Now, if you haven't seen it, get on YouTube and check it out. And you had a chat with Tyler Hamilton, and there's some really interesting insights. And we've touched on this before on the Detour about, riders particularly not being set up properly for that transition. What were the key takeaways, Jamie, from that chat?
Yeah, Dan, I've been working in the leadership space for a long time, and I've always been very curious about, how people progress in their careers and through life. And then, of course, getting back into competitive cycling about 10 years ago, and then, establishing friendships actually with many pros and former pros. I got really interested about this topic because I saw how much people struggle with it. So actually with what Bernard and I do with our YouTube channel, we've been doing a whole bunch of interviews with former pros on the transition. And the reality is that many of them really do struggle. They're not set up for it. They're not prepared for it. So yeah, we've been exploring that as a theme. Yeah.
Bernard, you've spent over 20 years, mentoring and helping particularly young cyclists, if you said in the intro, with the cycling centre in Belgium. What were some of those key themes that you were trying to work on with these younger guys?
Well, simply put, I asked why they wanted to come over and why they wanted to do what they want to do. And for a lot of guys that, they have an idea of becoming a professional cyclist, but that's not the real why. And I think you really need that to overcome all the difficulties and also to see this as a part of your life, not just the life. And I think that's part of the reason why transformation gets so hard later, when when you're only thinking about, hey, I want to be a professional. So I think that's the hardest thing to overcome. Why are you doing it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good point, Bernard. And in the Tyler Hamilton interview, Tyler talked about the fact that, when you're a young cyclist under 23 and you're trying to make it, your complete focus is on making it as a professional, right? So you're in no way thinking about what might follow or later in life, and probably for very good reason, because you need that focus. However, the real issue comes, when they then make it, they become established. And the reality with pro cycling is there is a use-by date on your career, right? And the interesting thing that then starts to happen, or the question that we ask is, well, once they're into that pro contract, they do need to remain focused on performance. However, it's almost like the industry discourages them from thinking about life after cycling. And one of the reasons for that is, well, we think there's a bit of what's called the myth of distraction. Riders are told, if you start thinking about your life after cycling, you're going to be distracted from the here and now. And Bernard and I, we don't really, and the people we've met and we've seen who've done it differently, we don't really agree with that, right, Bernard?
Yeah, no, I totally think it's not that way, because I literally lived with all those guys. And then let's say it's a hard day. That's 4 hours of training and a few hours of eating and cleaning up your bike. So there is a whole lot of day that you need to fill with something. So why could you not think about your future then? Because otherwise it's a pretty boring thing, and it's good when it goes well, but just think the moments it does not go well and you have nothing else to think about. How hard is that?
How would have you gone if you had Bernard's Belgian training centre back in the day?
Look, I thought about it quite a bit last night when I was reading up on all of that, Bernard. And in my early days over in Belgium, I remember going over there as an amateur in the early 70s. And it was just, well, we struggled. We stayed in really basic accommodation. I remember staying in the Casamattenstraat, which was sort of famous street where a lot of the Aussies used to go to. And the little apartments had no toilet, no showers, and they just got running water that year. Before that, you had to get the water from the well in the little court out front. Public toilets down the end, which everyone shared. And so very, very basic. And you thought about survival, I guess, in between. I mean, we'd ride a kermesse and it'd be wet, and you'd come home covered in bloody cow dung, and we'd grab the little tin bath out, boil the kettle a few times, sit your bum in it and clean yourselves, and then someone throw it out, and the next guy would do the same thing. So very different. I would have loved to have had your setup for that.
Well, yeah, but, in a way, what I wanted to do is I had the biggest admiration for all those guys coming from the other side of the world, whether it was America or Australia or South Africa, or, that alone already is marvelous to do, and it's a great adventure. But still, you want to make sure that those guys also can compete the right way, meaning you have a decent place to sleep, you have a decent place to eat and to rest, and only then you can kind of, fight with the same weapons, so to speak. So that's really what I wanted to do. And then on the other side, really helping them mentally, Yep.
But Bernard, I guess one thing is also we should touch on, Bernard, is the fact that, if you mentioned the 1,000 young guys that Bernard worked with over the years, but only about 10% of those actually went on to become professional. And I think, many people internationally or outside the sport, they don't realize really how tough it is to make it, to the top level. And, Bernard, you've talked to me about how in what you did at the cycling center was also to be realistic with those guys, right? And to say to them that, for many of you, this is not going to be your future. So therefore, while you're here, you should also be thinking about how else this experience will prepare you for later life. I mean, maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, it's even a smaller number. I would say a fair percentage is 1 or 2% that are making it. So meaning all the others are not becoming professional cyclists. So what I said, I will make sure that there is value for the buck, meaning I'm going to help you to become a professional. I do not know whether that's going to be a cyclist or something else, because what is a professional? That's somebody who makes money with what he's doing. And, there's a lot of stuff that needs to be in place to become a professional cyclist. So, yeah, I wanted to be real with them from day one. And that's why I said, make sure by the time you go back that you really know who you are, what your values are, what your talents are. And that's where it mixed up a lot, because a lot of people don't think about the talents. They only think about skills. And there is a huge difference between those things. But I wanted those guys to know what was going on. And in the research I did for my TED Talk, Hero of Your Game, there I found that a lot of ex-cyclists that didn't make it made it in life, especially because those guys really started to think, what are my talents? What else can I do? And, a lot of cyclists that make it never thought about those things. So that's where the transition becomes hard.
Jamie, do you think that what's happened in 2020, it's essentially made people uncomfortable and not take things for granted and realize, particularly professionally, hey, you could lose your job at any moment here. Do you think this will have a positive effect to get riders, particularly in that mindset of probably should think post-career, more so this year than ever?
Well, it's interesting you say that because another amazing conversation I had just a few days ago was with Matt Heyman. Alan Davis and I were talking to Matt for TCL, and Matt actually early on in his career he had quite a serious accident, which could have ended his career. It was an accident, or it was a health scare that he had, and he said how that scare early on helped him to keep perspective and to keep sort of a bit of a thought ahead about options. So I think you're absolutely right, Dan. I think the reality this year is that many riders will be unexpectedly out of contract. And I think the opposite. I think it's not about them, a lot of them are in panic mode because actually suddenly a premature retirement or gap in their career is facing them and they just haven't thought about it. Another interesting aspect of this that we spoke about with Matt Heyman was this, it's like Matt said that, when like you said, when you're really, really young and you're going for your contract, you're not thinking about anything else in life. You just want to be a pro cyclist. Then you become a pro cyclist, and it's almost like the business of cycling wants 110% out of you. So if you're seen to be, having an interest as an entrepreneur or studying or developing other interests, sometimes, some riders would say that the DS or the team management, they think you're not really committed. So for me, that's a bit weird, a bit unusual as well, because that's not how it works in many other industries and sectors where companies want to develop multifaceted talent. And then the next thing that Matt Heyman said was that particularly if you're a rider a bit later in your career, you feel very conscious of even talking about life after your career because there are other guys there who could be wanting to step into your contract or step into your shoes in the team. So it's almost like something that's not spoken about. So I think this year is going to be a huge shock for people. One, because they haven't thought about it. Secondly, maybe they've been discouraged from thinking about it. And thirdly, because they've been afraid to talk about it, even if that reality is facing them.
Bernard, you were talking earlier about, success. I mean, what does that look like, do you think, for a young cyclist?
Well, for a young cyclist, I think the very first step in success is getting a pro contract. And, for a lot of guys, that's the thing. That's already a first hurdle because, let's face it, getting that contract is not the end, but it's the start. So that's where a lot of guys make a mistake already. And success, then it's really about how realistic you are. You got to understand what your potential is, and then you need to try to find places where you can go with your talents, with your skills, and also with your limitations. And then I think when you have that, then you can have a clear idea of what your success can be. Otherwise, you're kind of misleading yourself, I guess.
Yeah. And that's an amazing point. I mean, that Bernard and I have explored a lot with recently and sometimes long retired pro cyclists like Tyler Hamilton, is that when they're in the sport, there is so much emphasis on your skills as a rider. Now, what are your skills? Your skills are the skills that you develop in your training, in the application of training protocols, in your understanding even of things like aerodynamics. So it's skill, and you're rewarded on those skills. The problem becomes when you then make that transition after your career, that those skills are not necessarily the right skills that are going to take you into a new career path. Right. And this is sometimes where cyclists get confused. So what do we see? I mean, Dan, I'm sure you've seen zillions of examples of this. What's the first thing that a retired cyclist does? They open a bike shop because they think they've got the skills of the technical side.
What you did, John.
They get into bike fitting, or they get into performance, management, or they get into coaching. I'm not saying these things are bad. However, what we see with a lot of cyclists is because they have this really strong work ethic and this need to set goals, they jump prematurely into these kind of job areas. And then within a year, sometimes too, they realize, you know what, I've got no passion for this. I've got no real joy in this. and they need to take time out to change. We've seen some recently retired Australian pros who've done exactly that, jumped straight into really intense careers. I won't talk about a certain Australian Liège winner who did that and probably pretty quickly realised that was not for him, right? So one of the things that we've started to understand is that when cyclists come to the end of their pro career, if they haven't really invested time in thinking about their talents, then the first thing they need to do is actually just take a break, take a few months, maybe half a year, to really explore your talents and understand what your possibilities might be, not rush into opening a bike shop or rush into some other job that may not be for you. I mean, Bernard, maybe you've got a take on that as well, because you've seen plenty of it.
Yeah, well, you're so right. And I think there is another important aspect, and it is, let's talk a minute for those cyclists that really become successful. I mean, they get used to all the fuzz and to all the attention they get, but they don't think a lot about why people are interested in them. The people around them in the team are obviously interested because this guy is bringing in the result. And at that moment, in a way, they should realize that the people from outside, a lot of them are fans because of you, but even more so because of your success. So once your race career is over, then you still have a name, but you don't have the success anymore. So that means that a lot of people that would have jumped over whatever to get to you when you were a cyclist, when you were successful, are now just waving hi to you. So it's a different dimension. So if you think like, oh, I'm successful, I get a lot of help from people and people are trying to give me whatever I want, if you think this is gonna stay like that after your career, big trouble too. So that's a point that is underestimated a lot.
Now we should check in with Sandy and see how he's traveling. Sandy, how's the ride going, mate? Are you motivated to listen to this chat or what?
Yeah, well, look, can I actually say I love this chat. This is, for me, it's really relevant. I think I'm turning 54 soon. This whole idea of transition is something I'm keenly interested in and following what I love doing and finding something for me. So I'm loving this discussion. I think one of the things that I've discovered is don't sort of think it's too late. For a long time I thought it's too late. And I think, Jamie, you probably went through that process yourself. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about that. But, mate, I'm working hard trying to keep the bunch together.
Good stuff.
Latest news in is you've upped the watts by about 25. So we're in the right areas.
It's all good. Good bunch.
Good stuff, mate. We'll check in with you again soon.
Cheers.
Cheers, mate.
Dan, on that, I think a guy that Bernard and I know very well is Michael Rogers, and Bernard and I both been connecting with and supporting Michael for a couple of years now, and it's amazing, if we look at what Michael did, and I think he's a case study actually, because he left the sport. And what we've seen is, the last couple of years, he was with NTT as a performance director, right? Now that was really following his skills. Michael Rogers as the time trialist, the expert on training techniques, aerodynamics, technology, he went into that. But although Michael loved the team and what it stood for and everything, he wasn't really fulfilled because what we started to understand was that role wasn't really tapping into his true talents. And in spending many hours talking with Michael and exploring possibilities, what we really understood about Michael was that this guy at his heart is a curious person. He's obsessed with learning, right? Just learning, absorbing. And the other thing is, since he was like 13 years old, Michael Rogers has been a technology nerd, right? He loves computers. He loves the way that AI is evolving and virtual cycling, all that stuff. So what we started to understand that this guy actually is a visionary, and the other thing about him, at the end of his road career, he was a road captain. Why? Because he's got amazing leadership capabilities. So if you see what you had Michael on the show just a few weeks ago, and what's amazing to see is he took the time to really understand his talents and then to say, you know what, this would be my dream role, right? Where I could bring all these talents together. And what has Michael done? Michael has actually gone into the UCI and he's pretty much written his own job description to align with his talents. So for me, that's just inspiring to see what someone of his capability can do when he combines that work ethic he has as a pro with his real talents and what he's now doing with that. And now he's reaching an incredible influential, role in the world of cycling, and he loves it, right? So I think that's a great example of how riders can do it right.
Hey, Iffy, we've spoken to a lot of successful Aussies on the world stage in cycling, your Alan Pipers, Matt Whites, Luke Roberts. What do you reckon it is, John, that it is given Aussies that sort of edge on the world scene?
Look, I think it's partly because it's such an effort to go from Australia to Europe and base yourself over there. It's a commitment thing, whereas a lot of, say, Poms who come over, they can just duck home, but it's a commitment, and these guys are committed to it, and I think that comes through. But one of the real interesting things that's come out of listening to the conversation with you guys, for me, is the teams really should look into this situation of helping riders, but that's not going to happen. They're flat out running the team, getting the money, and they're all about performance. It's really a role of the UCI that should have put in place people to help pros look at the future and the transition. So, it's a challenge, but I think the UCI needs a specific person to be.
Bernard, you've got the example of Michael Rogers. Bernard, why don't you go out and create that role, and away you go, mate? UCI, transition coordinator.
Well, in a way, with the cycling center, I was doing it that way, and I got laughed at in the beginning. But at the end of the day, I wanted to let talent in young guys blossom, and hopefully they were cyclists, but if not, then it was something else, and I think in the teams, if you think about the professional teams, that's too far in the chain. Those guys only have money to get performance, and in a way, that's what they sell to their sponsors. We're gonna win the tour, we're gonna win, win, and that's all what they're talking about. But it needs to come earlier, so maybe federations, but also the entire dynamic of cycling, I think, should change a little bit, where you really start talking in the beginning how hard it is. One of the first things I always said was, you're one crash away from a job at McDonald's.
But it's interesting that then John, I'm not sure it's the job of the UCI. I don't know, but Bernard and I actually we're actually at the moment as we speak, we're actually developing some webinars actually to offer for the people you mentioned earlier, right? People who are suddenly finding themselves at end of contract and they're going to feel at a loose end. Bernard and I, we mentor people individually, but actually the demand for this right now is massive. So we're actually got some stuff in the pipeline where we're going to actually be offering to teams and to riders some of this kind of stuff specifically on this topic, probably before Christmas. But I think actually if we look at the parallel here, I think the teams are missing a beat, because if you think about the top TSA consulting firms, the McKinseys, the PwCs, the Accentures, why do top talent go to those companies? Because they know that they're going to get developed, right? They're going to work like hell. They're going to give 110% of their energy. But what they understand is those organizations are going to develop their expertise, they're going to develop their knowledge, and they're going to give them a network for later on in their careers. So I think actually the pro teams are missing a beat, because if they really want to attract the best talent, the most motivated, the most intelligent, the most, committed, then offer them a little bit more than a pay packet. Look at what Green Edge has done with culture, right? That's amazing. You can attract people with the right environment, but why not also attract people with the promise that you're not just going to develop them as riders, you're going to develop them as human beings to launch them into their later lives. And I think that could be, an added value that would draw talent to these teams.
Well, it's funny you mentioned culture. Are you seeing a big shift, particularly in 2020? We talk about, riders becoming more comfortable with vulnerabilities. We're seeing a lot more emotion in interviews, and there seems to be a lot more emphasis on personality. And, what do you bring, not just as a rider and stats you get on pro cycling stats? It's got to be more the complete package. Are you finding that, Bernard, not just in cycling, but in business?
Well, in everything, yeah. Like in businesses, how you are as a person working in a team, whether it is a cycling team or a soccer team or a company, your value as a person in the entire organization is now more looked at than before. And in cycling, I think this is going on already a few years. Just think about Quickstep. It's a wolf pack, so it's a group of guys, and they have a lot of potential winners. But once they have one of their guys up the road, the other ones make sure that, it can stay that way. So the team mentality is much more important than it used to be. And I think that's rightfully so, but it should be more installed, more educated than it is right now.
But then this goes back to your question about why do so many Aussies make it? I think it's really remarkable. If we look today in the world of cycling, we just spoke about Michael Rogers, but Alan Piper, you've had Sutherland, the Flanders Classics manager on the show. It's really remarkable how many Aussies we see actually making it into very influential roles in the world of pro cycling today. And, Bernard and I have talked a lot about this and why this is the case, and he'll share his view on it. But I think one of those things is that many of the Aussies have been through the ringer, right, to come to Europe to make that massive sacrifice. So they understand vulnerability because they've been through trials in life, right? And that then brings them a certain, I think, empathy and ability to connect with riders and to connect with people, bring people together in a team that many others don't have. Bernard, I'm sure you've got to take on that because you had the chance to compare the young Americans and the Brits and the Canadians and the Australians that were coming over. What was different about the Australians for you?
For me, the difference, the similarity is the adventure. Australians and Americans are way more embracing the new and the adventure than the Europeans. Europeans, that's all the status quo. We did it that way 20 years ago, so why would we change? But the Aussies, I think they're a little tougher. They party when they can party, but they ride extremely hard when they need to. So they have, I think, the focus at the right moment for the right thing. And then, like you said, if you just think like Alan Piper, the guy came over here, and I think the only thing he was kind of sure of was about a roof above his head because he lived with the plunk cart. But when you read his book and when you talk to him, the guy at some moments in the week, he had to steal vegetables from the fields to eat. Just think, having that experience, how humble it makes you and how much it gives you a base to understand everybody else, because this guy was literally rock bottom. So there was no deeper place. He was there. So he can understand everything above it. And then when those guys have a clear mind and they know where they want to go, then you shouldn't be surprised that they have big places, important places, or even being like the director of a Tour de France winner. And like Michael Rogers, those guys came and did the same things. Matt Heyman, being at Rabobank, at the beginning, they laughed with him, because he was an Aussie, didn't understand it, this and that. So those guys become very humble. They have the determination, but because of those combinations, they really start to study every detail. And that's what makes them so strong later. Because they have done it all. You can't tell those guys anything. They've lived it.
Did you ever have to steal veggies, mate?
Well, we won't go down that path. But look, I'm not the very good example of it because I only ever went over for a few months each time, and I never stayed right through the year like a lot of the Aussies, who are the guys you're talking about, who are the real stars from back in those days. But interestingly, Bernard, when you look at the 1,000 people that you've had, approximately through your cycling centre, I doubt whether you ever really get that surprise in that I think you're pretty early on when you see a cyclist, you'll know whether he has got that special little extra that's going to get him to be a professional. As you said, you've developed them in lots of ways, but I think you'd be rarely surprised that where someone actually changes. You know, very early you would know that you haven't got the talents that are required.
Well,
Hey, Bernard, hey, Bernard, 1 second, mate. You asked me to remind you to breathe and speak slowly because Bernard gets really passionate and then his voice like goes way up. You know?
Bernard,
Take a deep breath, Bernard.
be yourself, Bernard. This is what I'm learning from this. Just be yourself, make yourself. Go for it, mate.
I love it that Jamie is taking care of me, huh?
Yeah.
But the thing is, what you can see early on is whether the guy is a winner, yes or no. And then later you will find out whether he can become a cyclist. Because let's face it, I do not believe in luck. I think this comes with, being prepared for the right opportunity. But I believe that you can have bad luck. So it's not because you see a guy after a month that you can say, he's going to make it. You can say, this guy is going to make a living and a life, not necessarily he's going to become a cyclist. Because as you said before, coming over from Australia to Europe, I mean, now it's already easier because there is email and there's everything, so we can be in virtual communication. But when I started, it was pigeon work, because you wrote letters and then you waited for weeks and then they answered and then weeks later, so a month later, you got something. So those guys went through complete different stories, so to speak, just only to survive that, and that's where you can see this guy can hold his shit together. This guy is going to make his life worthwhile. And those guys are making it because the biggest research I do is about guys that didn't make it. And let's face it, I think over those 1,000, about 30 made it as a professional, meaning all the others didn't. But if I see how many guys made a terrific life, are happy, have a great family, had a great professional career, for most of those guys, I am not surprised. I could see that after a few weeks. I could see they wouldn't become a cyclist, but I could see they would make it in life.
Hey guys, just a quick point too. When Bernard says guys, and when we say guys, we're being inclusive here, right? Because also one thing Bernard and I have done with TCL is we've interviewed also a lot of former professional female cyclists. People like Katie Bates, who I'm sure you know, guys, and she's amazing, right? We had this same conversation with her, but actually when you talk to the women, they do it often even tougher than the guys because the road to success for them is even rockier than for the guys because it's not often as smooth a path or an easier path. So, when we're using the term guys, don't think we're just talking about the men in the sport. We're absolutely also seeing the same sort of phenomenon with women. And look at what Katie's gone on to do post her career, inspiring other women, setting up a whole platform to bring female participation in the sport up to a new level. And that's a wonderful example of someone who's tapping into her talents, not just falling back to her skills that she acquired as a cyclist.
Now, I went down I went down a bit of a motivational video rabbit hole last night, and I come across a video from Kobe Bryant, and I reckon this is a similar trait because, the documentary, The Last Dance, everyone couldn't get over because we got to tap into the mindset of a guy like Michael Jordan. And what Kobe talked about is he had this thing called Goat Mountain, and he went and spoke to 6 of the best NBA players just to pick their brain. And this was when he first entered the NBA. And then he struck up this relationship with Michael Jordan, who he talks about being his older brother. But he said, I wanted to know what the mindset was of these champions.
Yeah.
What are the similarities or the success leaves clues for these top guys in cycling and in business? I'll start with you, Bernard, that you've found that there are some sort of trends that these guys are leaving behind that can reach those heights.
So you want to know the specifics that we see with both the cyclists and leaders in business?
I think people that achieve, high achievers, what are some of the common traits that these guys are leaving behind?
You could talk to the little Zach and I had last week. We talked about the self acronym. We talked about self-belief. We talk about enjoyment.
Yes.
We talk about the language of a winner, and we talked about fortitude. And I think those 4 things capture the essence of the winner's mindset, right?
Yeah, you're so right. And most of them, well, all of them, their biggest competitor is themselves. You know, those guys are never pleased. They always want to go better. And like Jamie said, enjoyment. I mean, even if it's a tough day in the rain, in the Belgian shit weather, you still need to find some enjoyment in it. And that's what it's all about, because there is, you know, you can't do something like this if you're not enjoying everything. Not everything as much, but you need to, that enjoyment part is huge. But again, you can only do that when you really know who you are, what your talents are, and why you are doing it. Then you can enjoy it.
On the flip side, Jamie, we were talking off air yesterday about the no arsehole rule.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you want to elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, I guess. And we've spoken to a lot of former pros about, you know, what were the teams they were in that had an amazing chemistry, an amazing dynamic. And, you know, for me as a leadership professor, one of the fundamentals that I'm interested in is what makes a high performing team, right? Whether it's in business, sport, life. And one of the things that you know the research has shown is that if you have an arsehole in a team, right? Now, what is an arsehole? Someone who's arrogant, sarcastic, a put-down person, you know, who has a huge ego, who doesn't want to collaborate. They want to keep their knowledge and information to themselves. Well, that becomes kind of contagious, right? It spreads. So, you know, one of the things that we start to understand, and I think your interview with Dave Brailsford was brilliant on this, a couple of things. Number one is what Dave Brailsford started to understand is what Bernard just alluded to, right? Is you can't sustain high performance for the individual or a team if the team is not enjoying what they do. If the individual doesn't enjoy because otherwise it's just work and that becomes a grind, right? Bradley Wiggins, he did his time with Sky, and what did he say? 1 Tour de France, never again, because it's not fun. I don't want to sacrifice my life to this. And you know, we saw in Dave Brailsford interview with you guys that he's reassessing that they need to bring enjoyment in. But equally, what Dave Brailsford started to understand, and I think a lot of people have started to understand because the insights you brought, Dan, through Backstage Pass, is the importance of chemistry in a team and the importance of not having assholes.
Now, speaking of digging deep, words just come in. Sandy Woolley's got some record watts. Sandy, how's the motivation, mate? You still chugging along?
It's good. It's good. We've got a lot of chat going in the conversation. So, Dan, you might just want to do a call out. We do have the replay up. So at the end of this, and all of the Detour podcasts can be found on YouTube. So get onto it if you miss anything. Some great conversations.
We've got some comments. Speaking of that, Diane said, loving this discussion. Portia, great discussion, guys. Dan says, morning, boys. Well, just a random one. Ewan says, hello from Cardiff, Wales. Very disappointed that Teo Guggenhardt is not one of the 6 nominated for BBC Sports Personality of the Year. He's been bloody robbed.
I mean, I think that's what we call a tangent, Dan.
Yeah, exactly.
Got me baffled.
Yeah. Any questions you want to throw out to the guys, Sandy?
No, I'm just loving this conversation. As I say, I think there's so many parallels while we're talking about cycling. There's just so much that really relates to anyone who's listening, whether you're a cyclist or not. This is stuff about who we are as people, being authentic, and dare I say it, not being an arsehole. So all of you who fall into the second category, you know, think about how you go about your work and how you interact with people.
Well, we've got a very strict no arsehole policy on the detail. All right, mate. Well, we'll check in with you just before
10 minutes to go.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just hold on to the end. Cheers. Thanks.
Right. Johnny, we should get rid of a bit of housekeeping. Well, not get rid of it. It's not a good lead-in for a sponsor segment. Do you want to do your spiel about WebEx and Mitchelton, mate?
I will. Well, we'll start with Telstra Connected Cycling, because that's what it's all about this morning. And they're powered by Cisco WebEx, video conferencing and online meeting software where you can meet face-to-face with anyone in the world on any device, secure in the knowledge your data and privacy is protected. Cisco WebEx is available via Telstra.
Beautiful. And Mitchelton Wines, John?
Yes, well, I've got a good friend staying up there right at the moment, so I'm sure she's enjoying her buffet special breakfast in at the beautiful Mitchelton Hotel. One of Australia's favourite wineries and a place of escape. Experience the history, the beauty and the serenity of the Goulburn Valley at your own pace. Looking over the vineyards from the iconic tower, staying at the new hotel, relaxing by the pool, recharging in the day spa, where you can quiet the mind and unwind the body and rediscover balance in a setting of peace and harmony. Explore the seasonal menu at the Muse, a wonderful restaurant where local produce offers worlds of flavour. Sample our seasonal menu with all wines perfectly paired. Stop by the Providor and tour the cellars and, of course, taste their highly awarded signature wines. Always to be enjoyed. Taste the craft and the care in every bottle at the cellar door. Mitchelton has become a very popular venue for weddings and to celebrate their special occasions. And there's a happy couple there. And you've got to visit the Aboriginal Art Gallery. It's a must. It's world class with a huge range of amazing pieces from a variety of the nation's best artists. And of course, there it is, our special, the $10,000 Land Cruiser with the $1.8 million paint job.
1.8, it's dropped. I thought it was 2.5.
Well, we're going to start again. We'll be up to 5.
Cheryl, live from the Mitchelton Hotel, says g'day. So there you go. The ads are working, Jerry. Here's a quick word from our great mates at Bike Exchange.
Look at this bike. You think it's just a bike, right? But it's not. It's a bike. 374 people are looking at. This guy, this girl, them, all looking at it. People from here, there, and wherever this is. People that are looking for a bike. Or just a piece of it. Amateurs, semi-amateurs, and pro-amateurs. This guy wants this bike, but with this crank and these bars. This could be the perfect match. But not this one. This girl has a bike to sell, and thousands of people might purchase it. Eyes on Bikes help grow small businesses. His, hers, yours, and the latest data and insights help those businesses keep moving. We are the world's #1 bike marketplace, with over 500,000 products and 900 brands, where buyers and sellers are brought together in a place where a bike is never just a bike. Bike Exchange, where the world buys, sells, learns, and rides.
All right, we're back with our chat with Jamie Anderson and Bernard Moerman. Jamie, one thing I notice with a lot of these successful guys in sports or business, it can sometimes come at a bit of a price because you do at times have to be a bit selfish and, you know, things might suffer. Do you find that it is hard also if you do have that drive to find that balance?
Look, Dan, I think that's a question. And I had, again, another amazing conversation the other day with Svein Tuft. What a character. I mean, just an incredible person. And one of the things that Svein was talking about was just how we measure success. You know, I mean, what is it? Is it status? Is it money? Is it podium results? And Svein actually was being very reflective about that, saying that, you know, maybe we think a bit too narrowly, as you know, whether it's in business or in cycling, about how we say that's a successful person, right? And I think that's something that all of us need to really reflect upon. And I think I go to Sandy's question because, you know, Sandy was saying that, you know, he's heading into his 50s and he's obviously thinking about what now is meaningful for him. And probably a lot of people on this call are starting to realize that success is about now much more than how much you earn and what, you know, what title you have on your business card. And for many of us, that success also starts to encompass being the best we can be as athletes, even if we're in our 40s and 50s, which certainly is a journey that I've been on over the last years.
And what about you, Bernard? What's particularly happened in the last couple of years to sort of change your perspective a bit in terms of where you want to take your path moving forward?
Well, my life changer was 2015, when I started to realize that what I was doing at that moment was not what I really wanted to do anymore. I mean, I had worked with 1,000 guys, but managing a professional team was not really what I wanted to do. And then I think it takes a certain guts or something needs to happen to walk away from it. And in the beginning, I need to say, the first months, I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I did research and I started looking at what I wanted to do. And I got to be honest, I was very lucky that the moment I really said, what am I going to do? I got a message from one of my former cyclists in the program that didn't become a cyclist, but went back to America, and he became an orthopedic surgeon and did heroic things in Afghanistan. And that made me start to think, because he called me a hero at that moment. I'm like, wait a second, hero, what, you did it. But then I started to realize that I helped those guys really find their talents and what they really wanted to do. And that's my calling, I guess, because this is now what I do day in, day out. And I love every second. And as Jamie said, it's obviously you need money to buy bread. But I mean, your success is not measured on just money. You wouldn't believe how much it gives me that I see so many guys finding their way, doing things with their talent and being happy. Because those guys all make money. They're even big success, but they couldn't fill it in years ago. But it grows. And if you look at Jamie now, I mean, let's face it, when you are a professor at renowned schools, as he was, you know, a lot of people would say, what? Is he quitting those jobs? How crazy is he? But look at him now, and 10 years into it, I mean, the guy wins pretty much anything he goes to. He was a European Master TT champion. I mean, as an Aussie, coming over here and winning that. Last week, he was on the podium with a former world champion, Balam. He won that race, one of the most prestigious virtual races. You know, he was road race medalist at the World Masters Games, won multiple races in the Grand Fondos. And look at the happiness you get from him now. So success, isn't that closer to real success than just making money or having a title of something?
Talking of money, how much do you have to pay Bernard for that spill, Jamie?
I love it. You know, thanks, Bernard. But Dan, listen, there's another guy who we have to talk about here because, you know, Iffy, you know, we met this guy, Bernard and I met Dan Jones about 6 months ago. This guy who thought that his skills were in filmmaking and making documentaries and stuff. And then we had lots of conversations with this guy called Dan Jones about what are his real talents in life. And what has Dan started to discover? That he has incredible talents as an interviewer. And in fact, he's got amazing talents at orchestrating conversations with people, right? And that's exactly what we're seeing now with you, Dan, on the Detour podcast. So maybe you can just speak briefly about the journey you've been on, because you've been going through this transition as well.
I think for me, I got to a point in doing the backstages and taking on board the doco. Normally you'd get that period of mental reset, you know, in a cycling season. It is a bubble, but it's a very full-on bubble when you're on the road. And doing the documentary as well, I didn't get that chance, particularly if you're creative. You need that break. And I got to the point where I was pretty burnt out, you know, starting a family. And I realized that, you know, the time's right to sort of step away. But it's not until you step away when you actually realize what you miss. And it's not so much the sport that I missed, it's the people and the connection. Yeah. And in 2020, the demand for connection is higher than ever, you know, and we get so many messages from people, not just with this podcast, I'm sure you get it with TCL and that as well. People love sharing stories. They love connection. They love vulnerability.
Then that's your talent, man. And I think that's, again, what we're talking about here, that for many of us, you know, even in our 40s, 50s, whatever it might be, maybe we've just been focused too much on our skills, you know, whether that's as a, I don't know, accountant, a lawyer or whatever. But is that really our talent, and is it our passion? And I think that's a different story. The other thing, of course, is this, that, you know, the crazy thing that sometimes happens is that when you make the time and you channel the energy into pursuing your your real passion, which for me was cycling, right? So I came full circle. I raced as a junior in Australia, national level up until my late teens, but because of my family situation, some other stuff, I never had the chance to do that. But guess what? That fire never went out of my belly. And, I had a 20-year hiatus from cycling, from competition. But gosh, when I came back, I was coming home, coming back to what I was so passionate about. And of course, that raw intensity of emotion that we experience as cyclists, as competitive cyclists, being in a race, standing on a podium, I don't care what anybody says about work, a job, nothing matches that. So I'm very passionate about it. And of course, the other thing we should say here is this, that, many of us on this call, we're parents, we're uncles, we're aunts, whatever it might be. Our children are watching us, right? So are our children watching us live our lives or living other people's lives, in the good job with the high salary, but actually in a path that we're not really inspired or passionate about? And that's one of the things that I'm incredibly proud of as a dad, that, I see my kids see what I do in my life now in terms of doing what I do in races and training hard and having that focus, but also seeing how that's now overlapping in my career and my professional life with This Cycling Life as a YouTube channel, working with amazing guys like Bernard, Michael Rogers, Alan Davis. So yeah, that's, we only have one life, live your life. And if your passion is cycling, then go for it.
Johnny? I was just going to say, yeah, look, it's wonderful listening to all of that, but it's pretty simple, as you touched on, Bernard. I think the real measure of success is happiness. Yeah. Because if you're happy, it's worked. Forget about everything else. If you can, and that, for me, I've been very lucky. I haven't got $1 million or anywhere near that, but I'm always happy, and I've enjoyed my life very much. And so I've managed to stay involved in a sport that I love, and it's been, my beacon, I suppose. But I wake up every morning with a smile on my face. And
hey, John, my wife gave me a beautiful birthday card this year, and on the birthday card it said, "Money can't buy you happiness, but it can buy you a bike, and that's pretty close."
Check in there with Sandy. So the man who looks happy. Have you finished your ride, Sandy?
Yeah, we have. And, I just love this conversation today. For me and all of the people who created Telstra Connected Cycling, we are a bunch of passionate people. This has got nothing to do with our day jobs, but I suppose it comes from a culture that Telstra actually has about being better together, looking after each other, and encouraging creation. And that's what we've done. And, it's just awesome. I think it's been really rewarding this whole year of doing the COVID series and this Wednesday spin. So we just love the fact that so many people love it and join us and make it what it is. So we are about people bringing purpose to technology. So this is no better example of that than what we're doing this morning. So again, thank you, Jamie and Bernard, for great insights that I'm sure so many who listen in and who will listen into the replay will just love it. So thanks again. Great chat.
Good
Thank
stuff,
you, Sandy.
Yeah, good, mate.
And how are the legs, mate, before we let you go?
Oh, the legs are good. It's the lungs. The lungs. My lungs. I had a heart stress test last week. Took the doctor a little while to find that I had a heart. So there you go.
Good stuff, mate. We'll check in with you again next week. But no, you should be commended as well, mate, because you've obviously followed a passion, which is cycling and connected people as well. So it's been a really important thing, particularly in 2020.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you.
Good on you, mate. One other thing I wanted to talk to you about quickly is, do you think that the biggest hurdle, Jamie, that people have is breaking through that wall of uncertainty? Like if you do make a change, like that uncertainty in your head going, but what if it doesn't work? I'm taking what is a perceived risk. Yeah,
Dan, look, I was shitting myself, man. When I stepped away from a professorship at a top tier business school, in 2000 and when was it? 2010. It's been almost 10 years now. I mean, I was terrified, right? But I just didn't feel a passion and energy for what I was doing anymore. So the thing that I did actually was take time out, and a big part of that was actually taking time out on my bike. And the fear that you have, it's very interesting when you make this shift or you try this new path, is you're terrified, right? You're terrified that, if I step away from my career or the grind for 3 months or 6 months, that all my skills are going to perish. People are going to forget about me. There'll be no going back. No, that's not how it works. We have to have a bit more self-confidence and self-belief that if we've already done well in our careers, then taking some time out, a few months, half a year, even a year, to reflect on what we want to come next, it's not as terrifying as we think. The other thing, is it's the financial stuff, right? We think, I'm not going to make money, but hang on a second. If you've been working already 30 years in your career, just get into a reality check there, right? Because even if you take a year out, like I did initially, you still have another, whether you're 40 years old like I was or 50 years old, you still have another 10, 15 years ahead of you. Bernard Moerman, the guy on this call, right, he's 62 years old. In the last 2 years, Bernard has become a TED speaker, a vlogger, an author. I mean, he has started this new chapter in his life in his early 60s. So it's never too late to follow your passion, to discover your talents. And if that involves getting back on a bike and setting a goal to race the UCI World Championship Grand Fondo, do it, okay? Because the worst thing that's going to happen to you is getting to the end of your life and saying, I wish I had. And that's a tragedy. That's a tragedy.
I've got to jump in because I'm 71, so I'm older than all of you.
It's just beginning, John. Life is just beginning.
I don't know what a vlogger is. So, Bernard, what is a vlogger?
Well, till 5 months ago, I didn't know either. It was Jamie telling me you should make vlogs. And I said, vlogs? So he said, well, that's a blog in video. And I said, what's a blog? So, there's an article and you make a video. Then you need to know that in my entire life, I did not take 200 pictures.
He's amazing, this guy.
Any of those things. I mean, a phone, this is an iPhone, but for me, this is to call somebody, So
hey, Bernard, but please, everybody. First thing, of course, is that we would love to connect to everybody watching this show. Bernard and I are both on LinkedIn. We have our This Cycling Life YouTube channel. If you want to see Bernard's amazing vlogs, connect with Bernard on LinkedIn and you'll see those. But yeah, I think it's a case in point here about never being too late, to start the next chapter. And Dan, we come back to your story, man. You have done, what you and Iffy are doing with this show is so innovative. It's so groundbreaking. And it's only happening because, Dan, you had the courage to say, I'm going to create that next path for myself. And then you started exploring it and getting into it and bouncing ideas off, me and Iffy and Bernard. And so, I think this show is an example of what is possible.
It goes back even further. None of this would have come about if it wasn't for John, because that's how the detour started. I was a 23-year-old film school, and my experience was wedding videos. I didn't know what I was doing, and John backed me, took me to the Tour de France. We got caught out. Within 2 or 3 days, they worked out that we didn't know what we were doing. But that's how it all started, and it is this journey that you go on. But I think at the end of the day, if your core principles are right, you're a good person, you connect with people well, but you've got that respect, people will back you and doors will open up and, you will have these connections. So,
Dan, the important thing, we joked about the no asshole rule, right? Well, what's the opposite of the no asshole rule? It's surrounding yourself with awesome, motivated people who also love cycling, right? Okay. And when you do that, amazing things happen. If you look at the collaboration that you, me, Bernard, Michael Rogers, Alan Davis, Iffy, we're having right now, it's like a multiplier effect, right? So it's also this, one of the other pieces of advice I give about anyone thinking about starting on a new path in life is that you don't know where you're going to end up, right? All that I knew was that I had this incredible passion for my sport as a competitor, but also what I started to realize I had a much deeper passion for it, the whole bubble of cycling, right? So I said, I just want to head towards that. So all I did was started reaching out to people and experimenting and trying new things, okay? It took 2.5, 3 years to, in a way, make that shift, but cycling is such a huge part of my life right now. If you had have told me 10 years ago when I stopped being a business school professor that this would be my life today, I would have said you're crazy. But I make a living from cycling today, from talking about it, from sharing about it, and all that stuff. So, if the next chapter of your life hasn't been written yet, make sure that you write it, not your boss, not the corporation, you write it. But you have to start writing to go. And, that's why Bernard is such an inspiration to me, because, he's an example that it's never too late for anybody.
I'm going to start vlogging. I better start vlogging.
You do it, John. Bernard has some videos on how to vlog. He's even produced some of those.
Oh, go back.
I would say you can sum it together with, it's about energy. And we all have energy. And the more happiness you have, the more you're ready to really release your energy. And that's what makes companies go forward. That's what families make grow, energy. And energy comes when there is happiness. So, and it's from far to see. So people want to be around people with energy. So that's what it's all about. And like you, Dan, what we saw coming in the last months, this is you just putting the energy that's in you in the right channel towards, happiness for others. And to me, that's the easy formula. The only thing you need is the guts to really go over the resistance, like, oh, can I leave what I was doing?
Now, we've had a few comments, all same theme. Jenny says, guys, thanks so much for amazing chat. Tracy says, thanks, guys. These rides and chats have set me up for the day. We've got another one from Kiwi Cats, listening in New Zealand. Thanks, guys. Very inspirational. Now, as we wrap this up, fellas, we've talked about on the show the theme of, 2020 has been a really difficult year for so many people across the world. What are the final bits of advice you've got for people? We'll start with you, Bernard, to get them through what has been a tough period, but how to start climbing that mountain again.
Well, what I say to everybody, go find your values, your talents on the way, discover your passions, and do something with impact. Because sure, that is going to bring happiness and at least a solution to get through those periods.
And Jamie?
Yeah, look, Dan, I would say, the 3 Fs, right? Fun, fear, and focus. Fun. Just have a purpose. Be passionate about what you do. Follow your dreams, right? And surround yourself with great people. Ride your bike. Do what gives you joy. That's the fun bit. You have to do that during the pandemic or you go nuts, right? You got to have some joy in your life. The second thing is fear, right? Too many of us, we see a big challenge, a big goal, those jerseys on the wall didn't happen because I thought it's impossible. They came because I set a bold goal for myself, a terrifying goal, and then I went for it. So, run towards fear. Don't run away from it, okay? And then the last thing is once you're loving what you do, once you've actually built the courage to confront your fears, the focus just comes naturally. The what you need to be doing comes naturally. So that's my advice, Dan.
Iffy, anything to leave?
Well, I'll tell you what I'm getting out of this whole hour is motivation. So I'm starting again in the whole stack of vlogging for a start. And look, it's wonderful. We touched on some of the things, and Bernard, you've helped. A lot of people come through the cycling, but you always got to remember there are those special people. One lovely case analysis I love is Simon Gerrans. Gerro did it the hard way. He went over there as an amateur and very small teams, gradually developed, become a professional, but reached his peak at well into his 30s. We're talking about all these youngsters that are popping up now and winning Tours de France at 21. But Gerro showed that there's another side, and you could reach your peak at mid-30s. He was world number one well into his 30s. So I think Simon Clark's a similar one right now, reaching a peak well later in life.
Listen, John. Look at Biden, mate. He's reaching his peak in his 70s. So there's still hope for you, mate.
That is becoming a bit of an issue in society. Do you think that is an issue that people focus too much on age? either
Yeah, of course
young or old.
it is. Bernard, you can talk to this, man. 'Cause
Yeah.
you're amazing.
I get that every day now. Like vlogs, why at your age? Why would you do that? I mean, and I don't know how it is in Australia, but over here, when you're about 60, you're supposed to just retire, and in the summer go to Spain, sit in the sun. You know, everything that I have experienced in my life, I want to share with other people, and they can do with it whatever they want. But at least then I feel that I have done what I needed to do by sharing it. You know, and I hope that I can do that another 20 years. And by the way, we live now in an age where people will have to change jobs multiple times and will have to work longer. But I don't care because I enjoy working. And that's what it's all about. Obviously, if you do something you don't like doing, then 10 minutes is too long.
Yeah.
But if you love what we're doing, I mean, I don't care that it is 14 hours a day. I've never counted my hours or my days. So,
yeah. I mean, Dan, you know, you gave that the other, you know, when you said, what should we be doing during the pandemic, right? To stay positive. Look, the first thing that we all should do, and this is a rule for me in life and in my family, Bernard, I think there's this philosophy. The first thing you wake up in the morning, you do is you smile, right? And then you get on your bike. Okay. Not everyone was going to get on the bike, but that's what I do. But the point I think Bernard and I are getting at here is the way that you live your days is the way that you live your life. Right. So if you live your days full of energy and inspiration and passion and dreams and you surround yourself with amazing people who also bring that positive energy, that collection of days soon becomes a collection of weeks, which becomes a collection of months, and that becomes your life. Right. So, you know, start living your life today. Don't wait for tomorrow or next week. Start living it today. And Dan, we're seeing that with you, mate. It's such a pleasure to see you thriving with what you're doing now, seeing Iffy becoming the internet, you know, like guru in his 70s. I mean, this is just mind-boggling, right?
Yeah.
You guys are knocking over, you know, I'm not going to mention the TV stations in Australia and all that stuff, but it's you two guys who are shaking things up, and it's awesome. It's just awesome.
As the thing, you know.
This has become like a group hug fest, you know.
Oh, it has. It's been 1 hour of therapy.
We better stop it here. There might be tears coming soon, Dan.
Exactly. But no, guys, can't thank you enough for coming on the show. I know, you know, everyone is going to get something out of the discussion, and it just gives you such a good perspective moving forward, you know. And it is all about positivity and, you know, focusing on the things that, you know, make you happy. And if you are happy, you're going to live a great life. It's a pretty simple philosophy. Look at Iffy. They call him Benjamin Button. You know, he wakes up with a smile every day. So you really do feel it.
Look, Dan, you know, the last quote of today for me will be this, you know, and I say this to all my corporate pals out there who have their nice, you know, company cars and stuff. The simple philosophy is this: 4 wheels move the body, 2 wheels move the soul. And that's what we're all about, man. And that's what all these Telstra Connected Cycling people are about, right? Getting cycling to work because they want to move their soul, and that's great.
Fantastic.
So, thanks a lot.
I don't want to wreck it now. I think we're going to have to leave on a high. But thanks again for joining us. If you want to be in touch with the guys, you can get them on LinkedIn. You can check out This Cycling Life on YouTube, Bernard's channel as well. Some fantastic vlogs, as we've learned what they are. But yeah, we'll be back again next week at 10 to 7 Australian Eastern Standard Time on Wednesday. I think we're going to have Simon Clark, Iffy, at this stage. Yep. So that'll be a fascinating chat. So stay tuned to that. Thanks again, guys, and we'll see you again on another episode of The Detour.
It's been